The most prestigious tournament of the year has just started on the Isle of Man. The Fide Grand Swiss is taking place with over 100 grandmasters participating, fighting for 2 spots to join the candidates event. And of course, who's also there? Hans Niemann. He is back in action straight from the US Championships. He's playing in the first round against a very strong young player from Norway, Amar. And it's a very interesting game, so I would like to show you what happened here. It's a very instructive Sicilian attacking game with a lot of thematical ideas. So let's see how Hans is doing in the very first round. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I'm going to cover many more games from this tournament as there are a lot of spectacular ideas to discuss. So let's have a look. Hans plays the move 1e4, c5, Sicilian opening, knight f3, d6. We go for the open variation. C takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6. And this is the classical variation. Now with the move bishop g5, we have the so-called Rouser system. e6, queen d2, a6, all very standard. Castling queenside, bishop d7. And now white has a very nice position with king already castled. And the main choice is how is he going to build up an attack. And basically there are 2 main ways of proceeding here as white. It's either advancing the pawn to f4, so you have 2 nice pawns next to each other in the center, looking for pawn breaks based on either e5 or perhaps even the move f5 at the right moment. But Hans goes for the second plan, and it's not better or worse than the other option. It's just the move with f3. It's mainly with the idea to support the pawn on e4 and try to launch an attack with moves like g4 and h4. So you're trying to build up a kingside attack. It's a different strategy, and it leads to very interesting play. And I think both players were pretty well prepared for this particular variation. Black goes for the move bishop e7, white goes king b1. Very useful move, very often seen in a lot of Sicilians. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and black plays the move queen c7. So after queen d2, the queen drops back, and you may think, why is the queen doing that? Well, after b5, very soon black is going to launch its b pawn to attack the knight, and then the knight will have to come back. White goes for h4, so the pawn protects the bishop, and later on the pawn can come forward to h5 as well. Black plays h6, questioning the bishop, and you don't really want to take on f6. After g takes f6, there's a huge pawn block, and therefore bishop e3 is a better idea. And now black has to be careful, because if you would just castle, then white has a hook. With a pawn on h6, there are ideas with g4, g5, and black will be forced to make a concession there, allowing the opening of a file. So basically the main point of black's strategy here is to play the move h5. So black is weakening its king side, but preventing white from carrying out that pawn break g2, g4 at this particular moment. But the bishop can come back now to g5, so the bishop is nicely anchored on that square, can no longer be kicked away by that pawn. Black plays b4, attacking the knight, and now knight e2. And this is all still kind of a standard, has been seen in various games still. One of the ideas for white is to put a knight on d4, and white is in good shape. But black goes for a5, and as I said, in majority of games people have gone here for knight d4, but Hans has a different idea, and it could well be that he had it prepared particularly for this game. He played the move c4, which is a very interesting move and has been made possible. Now there's no longer a knight on c3, so white is trying to grab some space and set up a nice bind with these 2 pawns, pawn on c4, pawn on e4, and also the queen helps to cover potential attacking ideas by black on the queen side. But there are some ideas which need to be discussed. First of all, there is this option to take en passant, as generally speaking opening up the files could be a nice idea, but here white would recapture with a knight on c3 and later is ready to put a bishop on b5, maybe even a4 can be played. There will be not that much pressure on this b file if white is able to stabilize its position by planting a bishop on that b5 square. So taking en passant is not too great, but how about taking the pawn on c4 with the queen? It looks like you're just able to capture a pawn, but this is a little trick, because now the queen is no longer on c7. White has this option to play the move e5. That's a great shot, because d takes e5 opens the d-file, and first we eliminate the defender. With bishop takes f6, we are ready to take next on d7, and white wins a piece. Obviously, you don't have to take the pawn on e5, but then white is able to open up the center, and there are a lot of attacking ideas also with a potential discovered attack with a knight coming into to any of these squares. So after the move c4, black is not interested in getting rid of that pawn yet, and play the move e5. And this is a very instructive moment, because the idea of this move is to prevent the knight from coming to d4 or even f4. So the knight is at the moment badly placed, and black is planning to get a bishop to e6 very soon. The knight goes to g3. Now the pawn is protected by the bishop, and I think here we have a critical moment, because black has to think about how to deal with his weakened squares d5 and f5. Well, in the game they follow the move rook d8, which is an interesting move, but I don't think it's really good. A more precise continuation here would be to play the move bishop a4, to attack the rook on d1, forcing the rook to go away from the d-file, because you don't really want to play b3. Then the bishop is happy to come back, and black has created the target. He can play a4 next, and the a-file will be opened very soon. So after bishop a4, maybe rook c1 could be played, and now g6, like the knight on g3 is looking for a way to infiltrate, but it's not really possible. Now let's compare to what happened in the game. Black played the move rook d8, and to understand what Amar was thinking here, the rook of course is indirectly defending the pawn on d6. If you take with the bishop on f6 the knight, black can recapture with the bishop, and now the pawn on d6, it's not really hanging. You cannot take this pawn, because there's a beautiful tactic here with the move bishop a4. As you're opening up the d-file, attack the queen, and after queen takes queen, it's rook takes d1 with checkmate. The bishop covers the c2 square, so the king cannot go anywhere. This is checkmate. Here you understand the main idea behind rook d8. But if you don't capture the pawn on d6 as white, the rook is not doing that much there. And Hans just played here the move bishop e2. I think that's a very, very good move. So now the back rank is better covered. Maybe bishop takes f6 is a potential idea. It's definitely interesting. So black played here the move bishop e6. But now white gets the chance to jump in with a knight to f5, attacking the pawn on g7. And, well, possibly, if you want, you can even come back with your knight to e3 when you're controlling both the d5 and the f5 square. So, black took the knight on f5 with the bishop, e takes f5, and this is a critical moment, because black has surrendered the pair of bishops and is a little bit suffering here because of somewhat passive position. With a dark squared bishop, not able to do that much, pawns in the center. What are you going to do here? Well, the critical move is to castle kingside, and after a move like g4, there's quite a strong attack coming up, but d5 could be a very nice way to liberate your position. After c takes d5, the rook can recapture, while after bishop takes f6, looking at if you take here, then white can just take the pawn. There is d takes c4 as an intermediate move. You're attacking the queen, white got to move the queen, and next you take back on f6. It's anybody's game. This was not played in the game, but I think it's very important for black to start with castling. Look what happened. Black played the immediate d5. It's the right idea, but it's the wrong execution. There is bishop takes f6, and black is having a big dilemma here, because if you go for the same intermediate move before recapturing the bishop on f6, attacking the queen on d2, white has this move, queen takes d8, queen sacrifice. After bishop takes, you take with the rook, and now we see the big problem. Black's king is still in the center. You have to take with the queen, bishop takes d8, king takes d8, and white emerges with an extra piece. That's game over. So Black has to recapture with the bishop or with a pawn, but with the pawn is even more ugly. So bishop takes f6 and now c takes d5. White has won a pawn. Now, of course, this was not a big blunder by black. It's a conscious pawn sacrifice. After castling kingside, black is looking for ways to activate his bishop. Be ready to go for a move like e4 at the right moment, maybe queen e5, maybe there are ideas to take on d5 and set up some mating threats against the pawn on b2. That is the idea, but white is first, is not going for an attack, but just advance the passed pawn. d6, excellent move, attacking the queen. The queen went to d7 to attack the pawn on f5, but now the move g4 was played. And you can see that if white is getting a chance, he will likely follow up with g5 very soon. Black, desperately looking for counterplay, played here the move e4. So that if the bishop comes on the threat by g5, the bishop can come to e5 and it will attack the pawn on d6. So Hans has this option to take the pawn on e4, but a much better move is try to activate your most important pieces, your major pieces, and the opposite colored bishops. Queen d5 was played. Beautiful move. Very important idea, because if black would take the pawn on f3, the idea is not to recapture on f3. There's h takes g4, bishop takes, rook f e8, and once again there are ideas to wrap up the pawn on d6 very soon. But after e takes f3, Hans's idea is to play the move bishop b5 to attack the queen. As the queen on d5 supports the bishop. If the queen goes away, then it's the move g5. And the bishop is trapped, cannot go anywhere. It can go to e7 actually, but then it's d takes e7, queen sacrifice, rook takes queen, you capture on f8 with check, the other rook, king takes f8, rook takes d5, and white has a technically winning position with two rooks and the bishop. This was pretty sure, this was all calculated by Hans and also by his opponent. Amar didn't capture on f3 for that reason, but played here the move b3. He's looking for a different path to generate counterplay. It's a pawn sacrifice. If you take with the queen, it's rook b8 and the b file is open. And next, black is going to capture on b2. A takes b3 is a much better idea to try to keep the files closed. Rook b8 played, and now it's the move g5, attacking the bishop. And as we can see, the bishop doesn't have great squares to go to. Black doesn't really want to go back to d8. Then there's no initiative. White is up a couple of pawns. It's game over in that case. So black went for a piece sacrifice, played the move a4, neglected the bishop on f6. G takes f6, white captures of course, a takes b3, and look at this pawn. This is a very typical idea in a lot of Sicilians. If black has the opportunity to play moves like rook fc8, queen to a4, and then put a queen on a2, it's going to be checkmate, as the king will not be able to escape via the center. But first things first, white is a piece up, you don't have to win in the attack. Queen d4 play to prevent the queen coming to a4. Queen takes f5 was played. So now black captures a pawn, has ideas maybe to take on f3, but more importantly, queen a5 is the main idea. Rook h2, g1 was played, excellent idea. If you now take on f3, there is this move bishop d3 to solve the check, attack the queen, and white is a piece up with a crushing attack. In the game, Amar played a move queen a5 right away, allowing rook takes g7 with check, king h8. Rook to g5, attacking the queen, hitting the pawn on h5, queen a2 played, king to c1, rook fc8. Black's pieces are coming into the attack, but now the king can just safely escape to d2. And after rook c2 check, it's king e3, and the king is absolutely safe. The checks are over, and the plan is very simple. White wants to take on h5, and after king g8, it's rook g1, and the two rooks are about to deliver checkmate to the black king. So the king went to h7. It's absolutely hopeless for black. Queen takes e4. White is a piece up, but more importantly, after king h6, rook takes h5. Black resigned. After king takes h5, it's queen h7 with checkmate. What a start for Hans. He's winning his first game in the most important tournament of the year. Great start, like in the US Championships. He started very well. Hopefully for him, he can do better in the upcoming rounds. Let me know what you think of this game. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I will cover many more games from this tournament, and make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.